In this episode, we will be discussing leading with trauma versus leading with transparency, what that looks like in your dating life, why it matters, and how you can show up as your most empowered self. Hi, and welcome to Chaos and Chemistry, a podcast focused on having all the chemistry and feel-good you desire without the chaos and toxicity. My name is Legan. I'm a former counselor turned coach, and I'm here with my friend and co-host Max.
Hi, everybody. My name is Max. I'm a relationship coach working with people to really improve their lives and relationships.
Mm-hmm. To learn more about us and how we might be able to help you feel better in the life you have today while creating the life you truly want, check us out on www.chaosandchemistry.com or send us an email at connect@chaosandchemistry.
All right. So, Legan, this is our official Christmas Chaos and Chemistry, the first ever, really, episode, Christmas special.
It's perfect timing because I feel like the holiday season is the height of chaos.
It is,
and
for sure.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but it always seemed like the holiday season was when those old attachments, like those old breakups, those old boyfriends would come out of the woodwork. And you would maybe run into exes, you would be running into old friends, and chaos and chemistry everywhere.
This is as good as it gets. And I do like that for the people that aren't watching, she has festive colors, and I totally screwed it up by forgetting. So I apologize. It's inappropriate. This is not the Christmas cheer. I'm like grumpy guy. No Christmas love. Feel bad.
Grinch.
All right. So today we're going to talk about really trauma dumping versus transparency in dating. Mm-hmm. I guess we should define terms, Legan. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that would be good. What's the difference?
Okay. So trauma dumping, I have it written down as sharing in a way that stems from pain, fear, and a need to control, often leading to artificial connections.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Versus transparency, which is sharing authentically with accountability, self-awareness, focus on growth. Mm-hmm. So how I look at it is when we're traumatized, we're really outside of ourselves all the time. Mm-hmm. We're in a kind of a fight or flight state. So we bring that traumatized fight or flight nervous system tension state into dating. And that kind of sets the tone kind of poorly, because instead of acting from an authentic, relaxed place, you're acting from this really jittery place and trying to create this artificial connection between you and a person you don't know. And they're bringing their traumas too. So you have a perfect concoction to create a lot of chaos.
Right. Which can disguise as intensity.
Right.
And
or chemistry, right? Like connection.
Yeah. It can be it can easily disguise as intensity and chemistry. But you're right. It's like building a house. It's the foundation. A relationship really is something that you build together. And hopefully, as time goes on, the house gets bigger and bigger, and you add wings, and it becomes more and more beautiful. And it ends up being this magnificent, creation that you've built together. So at the beginning is the most important part, because that's the foundation.
Yeah. It's funny that if you bring your trauma to your dating life, which we all do unconsciously, you're going to attract that trauma vibration, like energy is going to attract a similarly traumatized person. Yeah. So if you go and you do your trauma dump, but you don't get your expected result that you normally get, called quote unquote connection, then you're going to think that guy's boring or it's not going to work out. And you're going to actually discard many good people because they're not giving you the dysfunction or the response that trauma is it wants.
Right. Oh yeah, that's so true. I love that. I'm curious, Max, how did this present for you when you were dating, before you underwent your own healing journey and transformation in relationships? How did this show up for you?
Well, I kind of have like a bit of an ADHD thing. So I was always very jittery. I was always in my head kind of like trying to strategize or like micromanage the mood, make sure I was like being funny. We got the guys, like I usually ask the girl out, so it puts me in the situation of like I have to, make sure she's entertained, make sure she's taken care of. So
Yeah.
in my mind, I'm just like 1,000 different things going on. Plus, I have my weird patterns. I was never actually there. Like I recognize that the ADHD plus the hypertension, but plus like the always trying to, be controlling the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Really, I blew up. Like if I think back in my dating life, I blew up so many great opportunities with
Mm-hmm.
great women. Uh, just just tons of them. I mean, it's not only dating, but it's basically all my life. It's just one opportunity after the next that I wasn't prepared for
Mm-hmm.
because I just wasn't thinking clearly. I didn't have the clarity required that a healthy person
Mm-hmm.
would have. And
Yeah.
without the clarity, you make bad judgments. So if I didn't get that weird connection back, I'd be like, oh, this is not a good one. But really, it could have been a great one. But
Right.
I wasn't ready to see that. I wasn't prepared.
Right.
How about you,
Right.
Legan?
Right. For me, I think my story, my wound was don't be too much and but also be enough. So I was walking this tightrope always around being intriguing and being interesting and being someone that creates fun and creates a connection, but also not being too much. So
Right.
it was exhausting. And so usually I didn't really last very long. I didn't really hang around for a lot of relationships because who can do that? Who can do
Right.
that for more than a month or two? So once my strategy worked and the person was hooked, I usually would run at that point because
Right.
I just I didn't really know how to be myself in a relationship, or I didn't really know that being myself in a relationship could give me what I wanted.
Yeah. And
So I
you're more on
didn't
the eight.
I didn't trauma dump and I wasn't transparent. I was just like, I was neither. But
Yeah. I mean,
I
if
guess
we, yeah.
inadvertently I trauma dumped because I wasn't myself. So trauma dumping, and
Right.
I think that's important to know, trauma dumping doesn't always look like just verbal diarrhea on a date.
Right.
It,
Oversharing. Right.
yes, it doesn't always look like oversharing. Sometimes you can be trauma dumping just by the way you're presenting and the strategies you're using to get love because your
Yeah.
trauma is driving it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I always had the problem of speaking of trauma driving my relationships. If we look at like the like, I was just thinking about the first couple dates, but
Mm-hmm.
really as an avoidant, the trauma came up as soon as there was a connection, which it totally was.
Mm-hmm.
I would just bail out. I would disappear. I just could not comprehend someone just liking me, and then my
Yes.
fears would come up, and then I would just find any way to get the hell out of there. And I ghosted people all the time. I mean, it was really
Mm-hmm.
terrible. Uh,
Yeah.
and all I had to do was just become aware that there was nothing wrong. The person was not treating me poorly. They were really loving me, and I
Mm-hmm.
just had to stick around instead
Mm-hmm.
of like, not asking for the second date. And I was just like so worried, like, oh, does she like me or not? And just it was over. And I really spent well into my 30s. I mean, I didn't start dating till I was like 28,
Mm-hmm.
28 because I was so fearful. I was just
Mm-hmm.
terrified of everything that could go
Mm-hmm.
wrong. So
Right.
yeah, when I finally did start dating, I didn't have much luck because it would just be I would just pick it apart, find something wrong with them. But it was really just um, hiding the fact that I wasn't ready to just, be 2 feet in, stick around, just be normal,
Mm-hmm.
give it a chance, see if I really
Mm-hmm.
like the person. I would just pick something superficial and out the door. Uh,
Right. Right.
so
And then
much
and
of
then
life is just, yeah, good.
and then the sad part is it most people don't realize that they're doing this, and so then they take their lack of ability to have a relationship personally, and they take the other person's rejection personally, and they
Right.
take it all personally when really it's not about any of that. It's about a
Mm,
much deeper lack of understanding of how relationships work and how intimacy works. So it's not your fault in a sense. It's just really a lack of knowledge and awareness and understanding.
yeah. Yeah, I think the personalization thing, if there was
Mhm.
one thing that really got me, it was the
Mhm.
personalization because any little thing, I would just take it as something wrong with me, or something that
Yes.
uh,
Yes.
So
Yes.
it just set the tone poorly
Mm-hmm.
right off the bat. But it
Mm-hmm.
was basically because I was totally unaware, unconscious. And this is really the kicker is it took me till I was 37 before I found the right people to help me to bring me to my senses and recognize what the pattern was.
Mm-hmm.
What I was bringing to the table wasn't going to lead to the relationship I wanted. You
Right.
can't get the relationship you want trauma dumping because if you whoever you get would just be a mirror of that trauma. So if you're avoidant
Yes.
like myself, guess what? The only person that's going to stick through like all the mind games that I was doing and all the
Mm-hmm.
ghosting and not calling back for 5 days, is going to be an anxiously attached person
Right.
because they're matched with that energy. That's what they're looking for
Right.
unconsciously. So
Right.
the people that did get, and they're really beautiful. I mean, I don't regret any relationship I had because they're all beautiful people and they helped me so much. But they were also working through their traumas as well. They're also anxious
Right.
attachment.
Right. Well, Max, what would you say so that anyone listening can become more aware of their own behaviors? What are some key behaviors of trauma dumping?
Okay, so not taking accountability would be a big one. So
Mm-hmm.
that's not having self-awareness enough to see what
Mm-hmm.
you're bringing to the table. That
Mm-hmm.
you have to be contributing something to it. And
Mm-hmm.
if you think it's a problem, your dating life is a problem with the other person, you're just not looking deep enough. You're not
Right.
taking responsibility for the whole string of bad dating situations that you've gotten yourself into. Obviously, you're part of the issues. So accountability is a big one. I think for me and for a lot of people, when someone kind of overshares, they may be looking to get connection through rescuing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Playing the victim narrative. And the other person gets a sense of like, oh, I'm really connected to this person. Look how like, I want to just give them a big hug, and that's a really dangerous pattern because in like the Messiah complex or like trying to rescue someone, that's a very dysfunctional pattern because people get really comfortable in the victim narrative and people get very comfortable rescuing. And neither of those people are actually just being normal and grounded in themselves and their truth.
When I started dating my husband, I remember I was working with a coach at the time because I was like you. I was 36, 37, had never been able to be happy in a relationship. And I had
Right.
been married, but I could never be happy. I could never feel relaxed. I could never just trust. I could never feel close. So I knew something was wrong, but I remember her saying I was going on a date with him and she told me that I could not rescue him. So, I was a counselor, I was into psychology, I was always the listener, I was always the rescuer in so
Right.
many of my relationships. And she said, I don't want you to give him advice. I don't want you to rescue him or counsel him or teach him or anything in any way. And I remember feeling like panicked. And I remember saying, well, then he's not going to like me. And that's really, that conversation was my aha moment of, wow,
Yeah.
I really do that subconsciously as a way to manipulate someone into feeling connected to me and depending on me, which gives me a sense of safety. Someone's not going to leave me if I'm always rescuing them. Then they're
Right.
going to need me. But I did it. I was able to be myself.
That's great.
Yes. And here we
Well,
are, almost like 8 years later, here we are. So,
yeah, I mean, the real danger of rescuing people
mhm.
is that you get exactly what you're looking for. Someone that
Yes.
perpetually has to be rescued.
Yes.
So it's that trauma bonding that actually happens if you use these strategies.
Mhm.
If you fish with a certain lure, you're gonna get the certain type of fish. I mean,
Yes, great example. So true.
yeah,
And honestly, you might push away the person that you want.
that's right.
When I met my husband, I just thought he was adorable and it totally freaked me out because I usually didn't date people where I felt out of control. And
Right.
knowing him now, if I would have shown up with my trauma, if I would have trauma dumped in the sense of, rescuing and how all the things I do and all my accolades and everything. I mean, Mick, that that would have not even he probably wouldn't even have liked that. So
Yeah,
you
right.
end up, losing people that would have actually liked the you that you actually are better.
Yeah. How did it feel about like when you use that new strategy with the coach you were working with of not trying to help at all and just I guess sitting back and being quiet or how did it go? Like what did you experience?
It was horrible. No, it was it was horrible. You know what I remember us doing is because we had been friends, we knew each other, and we went golfing. And I remember not really wanting to golf that day, but I actually wanted to be outside. And I love golf. I grew up around golf. And I
Right.
thought, what would be really fun is if he played golf and I just took a book and I rode with him and I just read my book. And I remember thinking, that's so weird. No one does that. Then I don't look fun or then I don't look whatever. And it was the best. It was the best day. We had the best
Yeah.
day.
That's so beautiful. I think, yeah, the non-trying is like fundamental to healing, like doing a lot less than you normally would.
Yes.
I remember when I was trying to break the pattern, even now, because if it affects you in your dating life, it actually affects your entire life if you really look carefully at it.
Yes.
And I was always trying to fix everything at work. And one day I'm like, I can't do this anymore because it was really taxing. It was stressful. And it was everyone kind of doesn't, in one way, they're trauma bonded to that, but in another way, they're rejecting it as well. So I was just creating a lot of tension. And I just decided I'm not going to do this anymore to myself.
Right.
I'm not gonna get involved with anything. I'm just gonna listen. I'm just gonna sit back and listen. Even
Yes.
though I was like the manager, I'm gonna sit back and listen. And it was hard. I had to like really white knuckle it because I was so not used to it. But
Yes.
I was actually beginning to see everything so clearly after like I wasn't always interjecting. I was just sitting back. You have a lot of clarity available to you, but not if you're in an active state. Not if you're always thinking, strategizing in this like tense state. You can't see clearly. You won't make the right decisions. So
Yes.
part of sitting back is slowing down and having clarity to see who is this person in front of me? Do I even like this person? How am
Yes.
I showing up? Am I representing someone that is authentic, So just by
Right.
sitting back, you actually improve your odds tremendously of finding a good relationship, finding someone that is balanced. Because if you keep doing that other energy, you're going to find someone unbalanced. And then it's just going to be on repeat and it's going to keep going and going and going. So that's the real
Yes.
danger of the whole thing.
Yes. And you will believe that you have this intense connection, but really
Right.
it's, Brene Brown calls it counterfeit connection. We're calling it artificial connection because it's not real. It feels intense and it feels like what we believe connection is, but it really isn't real.
Right.
It's
Right.
not.
You're actually just, yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, if I put my Freudian hat on, you're just recreating the pattern that you probably used
Yes.
rescuing your parents and your mother,
Mhm.
right? You
Yeah.
learned it from somewhere. The question is like, where did you learn it from? You learned it because you were, at some level, you were seeking connection as a young person. And the only strategy that worked was rescuing
Mhm.
dysfunctional parent
Mhm.
or someone around you in your family system. So that's what you know. That's how you know. No one has ever taught you anything else. No one has
Right.
ever taught you that you can just be yourself. No one has ever taught you that you can sit back and people can still love you that way. It's just like a totally new paradigm. That's why when I was doing it, I was like white knuckling it. And that's why
Mhm.
it's so hard. If anyone's listening, I mean, that is in there. This is not an easy pattern to break because if you're you've been practicing it for literally decades on
Mhm.
autopilot, unbeknownst to you. So, uh,
Mhm.
give yourself a lot of grace and compassion if you identify with this, because
Mhm.
this pattern saved you as a child. Obviously, it doesn't help you as an adult, but it was the only way to get through that childhood. So be compassionate to
Mhm.
yourself and know that Legan has changed it. I've changed it. It's totally possible. It's
Mhm.
going to take work. It's going to take guidance, but you can totally do it.
Yes. Yes. And that's really why it matters. The
Yeah.
reason we're talking about it today is because Max and I have both been on, we've been on both sides and we're not special. We just wanted something different. So this matters because regardless of what you've always had, you can create a different scene on dates. We're talking about the scene that is created when you trauma dump versus when you're authentic and you're transparent. But
Yeah.
there's a different scene that exists. And that scene is where connection exists without dysfunction. So that is also a possible scene. So when you're on a date and you're finding yourself connecting, ask yourself, is this the way that I want to have connection with this person for the rest of my life? I know so many people, they go on first dates and they they bash their exes or they talk about their relationships from the past and how
We're all been
bad the other
guilty.
bad the other person is and how great. And I think, oh wow, like that's the bond from day one is how bad other people are. So
Mm,
you got two victims sitting in a booth or sitting in a bar or, at Topgolf, feeling a connection with the other person's victimhood. And, a friend of mine, another coach, Colleen Max, Colleen, she always
yeah.
says there's a great saying, misery loves company, victims hate a competition. And so
I
you will
love
be
it.
fighting. Yeah. So you will be fighting for who is the biggest victim in your relationship for the rest of your life.
Right. So
Yeah.
I think it's so critical to get the ball started correctly and set the
Hmm.
foundation correctly for that relationship.
Yes. Yes. Let's talk about transparency. Transparency looks like two adults who understand that they have contributed to their reality, they have room to grow, and they want to grow. Transparency looks like both people bringing some amount of self-awareness to the table. So that way, this person is aware of their patterning, aware of their insecurities, and the other person knows it too. So this gives both people a sense of security in
Right.
the relationship, even if it's a new relationship. There's a sense of trust and security that comes with talking to someone that is self-responsible and self-aware. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. I think it's so beautiful. It's literally the biggest green flag because
Yeah.
everyone has red flags. Everyone has gone through a lot of shit
Yeah.
in life,
Yeah.
I haven't met anyone that hasn't really been traumatized in some way. We're all
Hmm.
traumatized. The only difference is the people that are aware of their traumas and the people that are unaware of their traumas.
Right.
So if I meet a person, even in work, and they are genuinely acknowledging in a vulnerable, authentic way the struggles that they have, how they're looking at it in an adult way, and not blaming anyone of the past, not going into like repetitive things, but just being there truly in an authentic way, it's the biggest green flag because they already have the mindset that's going to be able to unpack and dismantle whatever traumas they have left, which we all do. But
Hmm.
I want to see that a person has the ability to self-reflect, has the ability to take responsibility, and has the ability to make changes in their lives and has a track record, at least since they became aware of that. If I see that in a person, I know it's just a matter of time before they're going to be a wonderful human being because they have the
Hmm.
tools and they know how to use it,
Right.
right? So
Right.
even the situation that they find themselves in, it doesn't matter if the tools, if they know how to use those tools. But if you find someone that's still asleep, doesn't know how to do the tools, has no self-awareness, even if they have the most pleasant life, it's just a matter of time before trauma and bad stuff are going to happen. And they're not going to have the tools to really unpack that in a healthy way. And this is going to get dumped on you or whoever is around them. And the misery that they create within themselves, it's going to hurt them and it's going to hurt everyone around them. So I'm always looking for green flags in all my interactions, whether it be a business partner, whether it be at work, whether it be everything.
Mhm.
I need to see someone that has self-awareness. If they have self-awareness, it's the key ingredient to a good relationship,
And
whatever that relationship is.
isn't it interesting how that changes? Because I remember when I was younger, I wanted someone that had because I wanted someone that had everything together. I wanted someone that had their
Right.
shit together. I wanted someone that had a great family. That I was looking for this perfect thing. I was looking for the perfect person, and really, that's such a red flag because, like you said, when life happens, then what?
Yeah.
When things change, then what? Neither one of you, you're both, out to sea in a canoe with nothing to paddle with. And then you're just yelling at each other, blaming the other person for not knowing how to get you both out of the situation that you're in and get to shore, get somewhere that you both want to go. Um, and it's just interesting now, self-awareness and the desire to grow and take responsibility. It's so respectable. It's so sexy.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
it's just it's just interesting how when you are, I love that word, when you are asleep and you're unaware, you find things attractive, like trauma. You find trauma attractive because,
Yeah.
oh wow, I'm not the only broken one. Or
Yeah.
the other extreme,
This
you
is what I
find
know.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you find perfection attractive. It's like,
Mm,
oh wow, this person's life is perfect. They will save me. And so you're just like bouncing from two extremes, trying to have some sense of I'm okay the way I am and I can do this thing called relationships. So
yeah.
what would
So
you
beautiful.
say are ways to communicate through transparency? Because there is so much good stuff on social media. I mean, we have a wealth of information accessible to us at this point in in time. So, but I do think that there's a fine line between transparency and trauma dumping, and it's not always clear. It's not always even clear to yourself in the
Right.
moment. So
Yeah.
what would you say are some, three aspects of transparent communication that you could date with, work with, friend with, take to all aspects of your life?
Well, I think one of them is constructive sharing. That
Mm,
means when you share about your past or your past experiences, even past relationships, there's a good way and a healthy way to do it. What the healthy way is, of course, without blame or resentment. So
mhm.
you're not, trying to cover stuff up or, try to be something that you're not. You can acknowledge your past. I've never said that you can't acknowledge your past. It's how you acknowledge it. If you acknowledge it in a non-blaming, non-resentful way, it's really beautiful. It can be
Mhm,
very healthy.
mhm.
And you can express your challenges that shaped you positively and as a way of telling your story as a growth story. I
Yeah.
think those two aspects of constructive sharing are really important.
Mhm. Yes. The non-blame approach is huge because you're able to talk about your difficult experiences without projecting your stuff onto the other person.
Mm,
We never think about if I'm trauma dumping, how does this person in front of me feel? Probably helpless, overwhelmed, uncomfortable, or their rescue urge is is ramping up. But we don't really
right.
think about how when we're talking about our experiences, how it might be impacting the other person. Yeah. So what is the non-blame approach? How would you describe a non-blaming approach? Or could maybe even give an
Yeah.
example?
Yeah. I would think talking about difficult experiences without projecting anger or ill will onto
Mhm.
others. And that requires you to have done the work to not have ill will towards others, right? So that
Right.
it's coming from an authentic place,
Right.
not a trying to like fake it place, but really you have to process your past. And
Mhm.
that's work you have to do with therapist or a coach to get to a place where it's not this huge baggage that you're bringing on. And even you're trying to hold back, like stuff the closet full and you're up against the wall. Y- you've done the work so that there really is no ill will. And you come to the relationship and you communicate in an authentic, non blaming way. I think it's important.
Yes.
And I think
And
the,
you
uh,
can even, let's say you're not there yet. Let's say that you're working with a therapist or a coach on your anger or
mm,
grief or, resentment. You can say that. You can say, I'm not there yet, but, and I'm noticing I'm still wanting to blame my ex, or I'm still wanting to blame my old boss, or I'm still wanting to blame in this area of my life. So I'm not really there yet, but I'm working on it. I'm working on it
yeah,
because this doesn't feel good to have this inside of me, and I don't want to take it into my future relationships. So it's not black or white. It's not like you have to wait until you have no anger or ill will inside of you, and it doesn't mean that you have to pretend that it's not inside of you. Authenticity is being honest, but you take responsibility for it. It's there. I know it's there. I don't love that it's there, and I'm working on it because this is important to me.
yeah, I love it. That's a
Mhm.
huge green flag. If I heard someone say that, I'd be like, oh my gosh, what a wonderful person that is that self-aware into themselves and is trying to change.
Right.
Change is literally the hardest thing in life.
Mhm.
Anybody that can change is tremendously courageous because it takes a tremendous amount of energy and
Mhm.
courage to
Mhm.
change yourself. First, to become aware. Second, to see that you have to make the change. And then to actually make the change or be in the process of making the change is
Mhm.
a huge green flag. And kudos to you because I think the vast majority of humanity is terrified of changing. They'd
Mhm.
rather stay with their own dysfunction and keep the game going over and over again than to realize, oh my gosh, I have to change it. I could have shown up a little bit better
Mhm. Yeah.
and make the effort to change. I think that's really beautiful.
I think
Uh,
thank you, Max. I think for me, it was the fear of not changing. that was scarier at that point in my life. You know, I had unintentionally hurt so many wonderful guys, um, with my avoidance and my behavior. And so, and hurt myself as well. You know, it, what we do to others, we do to ourselves, we do to others. So if you're in pain, it's really about, you know, what does it take for you to matter to yourself enough to want something different for yourself?
What do you think changed within you, League? I'm just curious, like,
Mm.
what happened at that part of your life that actually made you take the steps towards changing?
I think two things. My husband and I were separating, and I was already attached to Mick, my husband now. I was already anxiously attached, and typically I didn't choose relationships where I was the anxious one. I chose relationships where I was the more avoidant one, and I felt those
That's
were
like
really
getting
my sweet spot, where I could just be
yeah.
totally avoidant and not
It's
feel out of
easier. I think
control.
avoidance is easier. Yeah, I totally get you.
Yeah, and so, but Mick he was different, and I just thought, okay, I was cynical. I was a cynic. So I was like, okay, this probably is not going to last. This probably is not going to go anywhere, because I really didn't believe in love. I didn't really know how love worked. I didn't have any tools. And so I just used my cynicism to work for me. So I thought, well, okay, my marriage is ending. I'm 35. I have yet to ever really, I've yet to have been able to create what I believe is possible.
Mhm.
And if I don't do something different, I knew that Mick would not stick around, because he wasn't someone I could control. He wasn't someone that I could manipulate. He wasn't someone I could manipulate. He wasn't someone I could control. And so, and I just had this knowing inside of myself that he wouldn't be dealing with that.
Yeah,
And that
yeah,
was also what I loved so much about him, right? Like, we all say we want someone transparent. We want someone that's honest. We want someone that, you know, has boundaries. Well, he had a lot of those things. You know, we both, you know, matched on a wounding level, but he had a lot of green flags. And so that was basically it. I didn't want, if it ended, I wanted to know that regardless of whether it ended or not, and at that point I believed it probably would, that I had at least come out of it different. Because when we're just doing the same thing different day, and we're just repeating the same patterns, there's nothing, it's not an investment. You're wasting your time, you're wasting your energy. And for me, I was like, okay, I'm at a place where this is going to be an investment. I'm going to be 2 feet in. I'm going to use it as an experiment. I was like, I'm going to see if this coach knows what she's talking about. I'm going to experiment with this guy. And he knows it. I tell him all the time, I'm like, he was my first lab rat, because I had never done any of this stuff. I
yeah.
was so avoidant and dysfunctional, and I didn't realize it. So I just wanted to know, okay, I could do something different. So even if this doesn't work, maybe I could create it with someone else.
It's great,
Yeah.
Legan. Yeah. I mean, what I noticed in my dating, once I got healed and I actually started dating a secure person, total
Uh-huh.
different ball game. All my stuff came up right away, all the lingering stuff. I was like, what
Yes.
is this? This is crazy. Like, she's holding space. She's not judging me. Like, it was really bizarre. Like, I
Yes.
was used to like always getting beat up, because the avoidant always gets beat up.
Yes.
I mean, we traumatize people as well.
Hmm.
We gotta get traumatized as well, because we get blamed for everything, because the anxious usually blames the avoidant, which
Hmm.
is, I had a lot of blame. So, because I've done a lot. I mean, the avoidant does a lot, so he deserves it in certain way. But when I got to a secure person, that was a whole different ballgame, because there wasn't that game anymore. I didn't know what to
Hmm.
do with myself, and I had to really level up too. So that's awesome,
Yes.
Legan. I love it.
Yes. Well, it's so true what you said. Everybody wants a healthy relationship, but what they don't understand is a healthy relationship is going to crack you open in ways
That's
that
right. Ooh,
you really
amen,
need
sister.
support. You need support
Yeah,
while
yeah,
that is through that process, because
yeah.
it's going to be unlike anything you've experienced. And most of my clients that have been on the avoidant or the anxious side, what happens is they get into a healthy relationship or somewhat healthy relationship, and they're trying to show up in a healthier way. And they have this healthy person, and they don't know what to do with themselves. They're like, he
Yeah.
listens, he validates me, there's no problems. Like, what are we supposed to do? Just
It's terrifying.
enjoy each other for the rest of our lives? I'm like, well, yeah, kind
Oh my
of.
God.
Yeah, that's kind of the point. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's really crazy. I mean, the anxious, both the anxious and avoidant, they're really two sides of the same coin.
Yes.
They both have an
Yes.
unlovability wound. So if you
Yes.
find someone, this is why it's very unusual for an anxious person to actually stay with a secure person.
Mhm.
Because as soon as the secure person starts loving them, they're going
Yes.
to be like, I don't know what's wrong with you, but there's something wrong with you. And you
Yes.
shouldn't be loving this. And then
Yes.
boom, they'll find a way to get out. They'll want it as well. So
Yes.
with that unlovability wound, it's very hard to be in the presence of someone who actually loves you. You will reject it somehow. Your ego will just try to find a way out and
Yes.
make it about them, or it's boring, or he's not giving you the chemistry, or this and that, and out the door you go. But it's really just your trauma guiding you rather than love. So
Yes. Well
watch
said.
out.
Yes. Yes.
Thanks.
So what would you say the other point around healthy communication that is transparent is being transparent with yourself and knowing your needs, right?
Yeah.
So we've talked about ways to communicate in a transparent way, such as constructive sharing, a non-blame approach. Also, just as important is being self-transparent in the sense that you know what your needs are and that there's not shame around your needs. You know, we have so
Mm,
much shame around our needs.
yeah.
We kind of show up as like we're this superhero person that doesn't need anything. Both people do it. You know, that we're showing up like I don't need anything. And it's false advertising because you do need things. You're a human being, you need things. And the right person is going to love that reciprocity that comes in a relationship. They're going to love receiving and they're also going to love giving. You know, they're going to love meeting some of your needs. They're not going to,
Right.
no one wants to be held responsible for your needs. Those are two different things. But knowing what your needs are, you know, if you're someone that needs consistent communication, being able to say that, no, I don't know if this is the way I will always be, but consistent communication is important to me. It gives me a sense of security. I feel a sense of momentum when I date. You know, it's just something that is important to me, and that's okay. And then sharing that. And if the other person is someone that's more avoidant, because we're all kind of on a spectrum, you know,
Right. Amen.
so
Yep.
they might think, consistent communication, you know, like that's too much for me. Great. You're not a match. And, you know, no harm, no foul, and you both go on your merry way. But when we pretend we're not being transparent with ourselves and then we're not being transparent with someone else, and it's
Mm,
just muddy water from there out. So, keys of transparency, key traits of transparency are, you know, being focused on the present, expressing authentically without manipulation or seeking some type of control over the conversation or control of how the other person sees you. You know, when you're transparent, you don't have an agenda. And I would say that's the biggest takeaway is that when you're on a date, if you're present and you're relaxed and you're connected to yourself and you're just there from a curious place, there's no agenda. So if you're
mm,
going into dating or work meetings and you have an agenda for how you want this other person to see you or how you want the feeling to be between you, you're really getting in the way of clarity and authenticity. So, Max, what are some questions that anyone listening could reflect on to become more transparent within themselves?
yeah. Legan, I just want to say that what you just said was just so beautifully put. Thank you so much
Oh,
because
thank you.
it's not only relationships, but everything in life.
Mm-hmm.
Any control, any outcome, desire for it, you're just getting in the way. And removing that is such a beautiful way to live,
Yeah.
especially in your dating life. But way to go, man. I love it. Beautiful,
Yeah.
Legan. Thank you.
Thanks.
Um, you're awesome.
Mm,
So questions to reflect on. Are you creating connection through victimhood or authenticity?
mm,
That's a good one. Another one. Do you overshare to seek control or validation?
mm-hmm.
Can you share your past as a constructive learning experience rather than a weapon? Are you attracting people who mirror your unhealed patterns, or are you ready for someone healthy?
Mhm.
And finally, can you become more present and self-aware in your dating approach?
Yes.
And the answer to those is, of course you can. You
Yes.
can totally do it. But it does take, I think it does take guidance because, as Eagle was saying, we bring our dysfunctions because it's a learned behavior from childhood. And that learned behavior runs on autopilot your whole life.
Mhm.
So until you become aware and have the courage to change, that pattern is still in play. And default patterns do not change easily. They take multiple years to break them.
Mhm.
So now's the time to really up-level your dating life. It's totally
Yes.
possible, totally doable. Okay, so Legan, how to apply this to our daily lives?
Yes. And I wanted to add too that you can apply it. So we're going into how to apply it to your life. You can apply it now. I think there's
Right.
this idea that you have to be fully ascension level into the heavens healed to have a healthy relationship.
Right.
And and we're never going to get there probably as long as we're human, we're just not going to get there. But and if you are and that's
For
your
yourself,
goal.
Legan.
Yeah,
I'm gonna get there. I'm
yeah.
getting there. I don't know
I
about you
know. I
guys,
knew
but
you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say that. I was like, wait, Max is
Rob
getting
that.
there.
That's a softball. Thank you. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
So, but you can start now. It's not like anyone that you date, we all match on our wounding. So the
Mhm.
goal isn't to show up perfectly healthy and healed and have this other person be perfectly healthy and healed. You can start dating as a big old mess and use every moment to become more aware, to become more honest, to do scary things, and to start kind of changing the water of your relationships because you never know. That other person might be ready too. And then you can grow together. And it's really cool. It's amazing to grow together in a relationship. So
Yeah.
I just say that because I think some people listen and they think, oh, I'm just so far away, or, I have so much work to do. And it's like, well, what better place to do work than an environment where you can do it?
Yeah. In fact, I'd go, I mean, whoever you have in front of you, as dysfunctional as it may be, is the perfect place to start doing the work. You don't
Yes.
even have to wait for someone that's like even trying to start. You
Hmm.
can work with people. Like all my clients, when they come to me, guess what? Their partner is totally oblivious most of the time. And I can't get into the partner's head. I can't talk to the partner.
Right.
But if that person that I'm talking to is ready to make a change, they work with that partner and both of them will actually start shifting
Yes.
because the only thing that needs to be changing is you. And once you start changing, everything around you changes. So whatever crazy drama-filled environment you're in, that's exactly where you need to be in. That's why it's there. If it's triggering you, great. It's an opportunity to work through those triggers. So whatever
Yes.
you have, Legan's absolutely right. You don't have to wait at all. Literally right now, after subscribe and send it to our email list, you can check us out on chaosandchemistry.com. You can go to your partner and start shifting. It's actually possible just right now. All you
Mhm.
have to do is you bring awareness to the situation, and it's going to level both of you guys up. So
W-
I love that, Blegan. There's nothing to wait for. You're
Yeah.
literally in it right now.
Without a
And if you're
doubt.
talking, listen, yeah.
Get your own lab rat and start doing the work because, my husband and I, we've grown and changed so much. And, I tell you all the time, I still just adore him. And I never
Oh,
thought that was possible. I thought people get bored, they quit having sex, the feelings go away, and it really doesn't have to. And is why I think both of us are here because we truly believe what
yeah,
we're teaching. So
yeah,
how to apply it? Pause before you share. Pause, pause, pause. Ask yourself, am I sharing to connect or to try to control this person's narrative of me, or try to control how they see me, or try to control the lack of connection that might be happening on the date? Pause before sharing. Own your story. Take accountability and share what you've learned. You know, be honest. Focus on your growth. Look at the present and express your needs with clarity with the other person. In relationships, this is something that is important to me. Observe your patterns. Start keeping track of your patterns. Every single guy you've dated, what do they all have in common? Every single job you've had, what do they all have in common? Notice when old dysfunctional habits appear and be aware of them and address them. And then most importantly, be patient, because all of this unlearning and connecting and deeper intimacy, it is something that develops. It's something that unfolds. It's a process. And it's beautiful. But you have to be patient.
All right. So if this resonates with you guys, please check us out on www.chaosandchemistry.com. And if you need help, feel free to book a discovery session with us. It's the first step towards finding lasting happiness.
Mm-hmm. Mm. So true. So true.